little bit more fighting here at whatever the hell the name of this thing is, Cynoscephalae. Cynoscephalae, I don't know. Anyway, Romans actually moved this time with these guys again. Got a line maneuver. So we're able to get everybody going. And then the Macedonians hit with their cav. Now, their cav slammed into the Roman cav, knocked it off the board, pursued it off the board actually. We got the Macedonian cav here. So we got the first real blood here, with the Macedonians now having lost one of their cav units too, though, essentially, in exchange. And they kind of, I don't think they got to recuperate this guy. But then the Roman infantry were able to hit them, and then in a trumping attempt to bring the reinforcements on, well, that didn't work. So the Romans continued to strike. And now, this is pretty much where we're at. Now, it's really, really hard to tell who's what. And I still haven't looked up why. Supposedly, there's some statement about this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About why they chose this. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. But we've got another stack of Macedonians coming in at this point to start deploying. And we still haven't gotten those guys on the map. Of course, I can start bringing the phalanxes on first, if I so desire, which will help a little bit. Anyway, there we have it. So this next turn, the Romans pushed forward even further. A little bit of engagement up here. The lights, one of them went running back, but this Prefect Equitorum went back, grabbed the cav. Now, things are getting to the point where the Prefect Equitorum is going to be in command of those lights instead, and the Prefect Equitorum is going to have just the Roman cav, and that's just how it's going to break down as this starts to coalesce. Also see the beginning of one of the bunches of phalanxes coming in. I want to get them on the board and ready as soon as possible. They're such a pain to deploy. Now, should I have brought other units in front of them to provide a screen? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But I'm going to try to get them up here as quickly as possible, maybe use these as a screen, or whatever. Buy some time so that I can deploy another set up here, with the hill as the advantage. Macedonians took some losses. One was a failed rally, and the other one ran off the map over there. So that's 10 points for them that they've lost. And now, it's the hard part of trying to figure out where to put these pieces, because unlike the Carthaginians, etc., it's kind of tough to figure out where these guys go. Red and orange, there's such a big pile of different countries that have that coloring. So we see a sharp little engagement happening where the Romans managed to pretty much repulse the remainder. There's some Roman cav up here that swung through. The remainder of the Macedonian forces up here. Yes, this managed to rally. But other than that, everything here is pretty much Roman. Although it's really hard to tell with these colors, right? Anyway, elsewhere, I'll take care of the rest of these a little bit. Elsewhere we see the Macedonian phalanxes moving onto the board, as well as a couple of the Roman, one of the Roman legions moving on. It's not entirely on the board yet. Losses? Well, about even actually. They each took 5 points in here. Gotta figure out where those go. Okay, well, we're beginning to develop a battle here. 2 different legionary units marching onto the board. Oh, just the heavy infantry right now. These guys I didn't put into column, and they're struggling their way up the hill. These guys I did, and I'm going to have to convert these guys to column and hope they recover on their way up. Meanwhile, the phalanxes, they're all in column. I may not have marked them all, but they are, as are the hoplites. Things are just, you can't maneuver here unless you're in column, basically. There aren't a lot of in-column markers, which sucks. We've got one little lone Macedonian cav kicking around down here. The Romans otherwise have gathered and taken control of the ridgeline for now. Will those heavies be able to brush them off? Yeah, pretty easily, but if they have to fight their way up, as opposed to taking controlled ground, it's going to be a tougher situation. Plus, these Romans are pushing up there, but somebody forgot to put them in column. All right. Okay, so the Romans open things up, trying to deploy some troops over here to their far left flank, starting to move those lights to take the ridge and prevent the Macedonians from picking it up. Well, Macedonians trumped in and streamed one of their phalanxes onto the board. That's going to be hard for the Romans to deal with in any meaningful way. They've got one cav that might be able to do something significant. Well, that heavy cav was useful, or Roman cav was useful. It charged down, hit one of these phalanxes, and didn't break it right away. But on Philip's attempt to reactivate it and hit the cav head on with it, well, the ensuing fight ended up breaking it and sending it flying. That's going to keep running. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's going to have trouble getting that off the map elsewhere. Well, we see I'm bringing some skirmishers up. Probably too late. I wanted them up there before, but to help with the deployment. Got to get the cav on the board too. It's tough to funnel all these troops in with just enough leaders to kind of command the stuff that's up front. So it's, it seems safe to. It seems only safe to have those leaders up front. If they can't command those units, if those units were, say, shared under command of one of the leaders, well, then maybe I'd only get to use half a front at a time. But it's a nightmare bringing the troops up. The Romans are facing something similar. They've got all their leaders on the board, commanding all their different units, and now everything's sitting here under Flaminius. And he's just got piles of stuff he doesn't know what to do with. Did bring some Roman cav on, though. That should help at least loosen things up a little bit. Okay, this is pretty much the situation at the end of this turn. I don't know the numbers of the turns anymore. They don't really matter. It's just because we had the reinforcements trickling, and they kind of vaguely did for a little bit. So the lights... The cav managed to smack another one of these phalanxes back. This guy's not in column. These guys aren't in column. This guy is. It's really tough to keep track of this all because there's very, very few markers for it. And likewise, Romans bringing their forces into play. Also in column, I just don't have enough to cover everything. But a lot of trumping type action going on. Philip actually lost his action completely due to trying to trump in to prevent the cav from getting that first strike. And I don't know. But overall what we're seeing is kind of this deployment on this side, but the Macedonians are failing to get their phalanx into place up on the ridge over here where the light infantry is in the way. And here even, it's not really pleasant. They're taking losses that aren't from the main Roman army. They're from these Greek light infantry ally units that, Okay, so they're routing, but they're doing heavy damage to the phalanx. Definitely bringing the phalanx up first didn't work very well. I should be fighting. I got this wonderful vehicle going by constantly. They should be... there's a reason you use the lights to kind of screen and everything. I'm just used to, hey, let's throw the big stuff in, see what it breaks. Well, we're seeing that it doesn't really work. And that kind of makes me happy in a kind of funny sort of way, even though it's destroying this battle. I've always felt kind of that, gee, maybe it would make more sense to throw the heavies in. Well, this may be the worst place to do so, where the terrain's kind of not in their favor, but it's interesting. All right. Well, Macedonians are continuing to have significant failures with trumping. In this turn, last turn they lost Philip. This turn they lost Philip and Nicanor, who are sort of, the two guys closest to the front, able to do things. That's leaving these phalanxes kind of out of command. I mean, they're just standing around doing nothing at this point. Meanwhile, the Romans are pushing forces up onto the hills, and in this case kind of rallying that error of not not having been in column earlier. Alright. Well, the Macedonians got their cav revenge. They struck in and hit this column here, routed a unit. But the Roman cav came back and drove, well, their cav into the dead pile. And then that sent them off into pursuit here, which essentially gets them off the map. But they can come back conceivably. Leadership problems, definitely. Romans had a failure as well in their initiative. Over here, we got some forces moving forward, some skirmishers, engaging those cav, firing at them, making them have to cope with the skirmishers rather than striking straight at the phalanx columns, which haven't been able to deploy still. Definite problems, though, for the Macedonians here. Alright, I guess I'll record this one and go forward. Well, before I get too far into the turn, and I've gotten quite a ways already, we've seen a couple of units. This can't be rallied because this guy didn't get a continuation that he needed. But some of the Romans moving forward. The cav shifting up to here. Attempted trump failed. This guy drove off his skirmishers, but the biggie is this tribune here, Magnus, launched his main legionary forces right into the phalanxes, and he's actually gotten 2 flank attacks. One here, actually make that 3, because I think he drove this one off with the light. That was somebody else actually, but he hit this and he hit this, and is really kind of shattering the Macedonians before they can form up here. This is much, much worse for the Macedonians than it was historically, mainly because I'm kind of incompetent at trying to maneuver these big things up the hills. You know, it's like, you want them in column or else they're going to take damage walking. And they can't be in column, and they have to be deployed with their flanks not exposed, and there just isn't time. And I think I'm trying too hard to get the crest of the hill, and that's part of the problem. I should have just hung back, let the Romans come up and face the phalanxes as they stand with their defensive advantage. But we already know the Roman army is pretty good against phalanxes, even in the plains. And here the terrain is definitely against them, so it's kind of painful to me. Alright, onward. That's pretty much the end of the road here. Philip's been doing some journeyman work, getting his line of phalanx into place. Now, he doesn't have as much threat here as his left flank does, but, you know, at least he's present and can do some stuff, and he's got his cav kind of spreading out here as well. This guy is just being chased around. He wants to go back and rally that Macedonian cav and bring it back on the board, or else go take command of this cav and do something valuable with it or something. But he failed his trump attempt before. There's been a lot of trump failing. And over here, not a lot, just the Velites moving forward. The Romans having their own difficulties getting things moving. There aren't a lot of leaders on the board. But here's the biggie. We got 14, 15, 16 points more, which puts us to what, 43? Getting there. I mean, it's about a third of the way there, and not much done to the Romans comparatively. Maybe, you know, they're a little under 20. All right, this one's going up.